Number 10. Civil War I. Oh boy, the first Civil War caused a great uproar and a good deal of problems in the superhero community. It also made Earth vulnerable to attack, as it evidently involved just infighting. When superheroes turn on each other, that's bad. When two main superheroes who are part of the same team turn on each other, that's ridiculous. And that's exactly what happened with Civil War I. While the inciting incident that divided heroes wasn't caused by Iron Man or Captain America, and actually was pretty serious, they both had become leaders of two different approaches for how to best resolve that main issue. Iron Man believed that superhuman beings needed a shorter and tighter leash basically, and should work with the government so they could kind of be overseen. Number 9. Axis. Axis was an event where we saw heroes and villains sort of do kind of like a role reversal. This happened as a result of a spell backfiring, cast by, well, you probably guessed it, none other than Scarlet Witch. Wanda, for being a powerful magic user, has kind of a challenging time with magic. Although, to be fair, she actually wasn't the only caster involved here, although she is the one that we often talk about. Doctor Strange started casting with her, and when he got taken out, Doctor Doom actually helped in his stead. So Doom is also possibly to blame as well, even though Wanda usually takes a lot of the flack for this one. What launched the Axis event was Wanda and Doom attempting to cast a spell on the evolved and supremely powerful version of Red Skull, Red Onslaught, which sort of came about when Magneto was like, I know how to fix this, I'll kill you, and then Red Onslaught happened, so it didn't work out so great. The spell actually succeeded, but kind of backfired in that many other heroes and villains within a certain radius also got hit with the spell unintentionally. Oops. And friends, if you are loving what we do here at Top 10 Nerd, may I recommend that you check out our latest channel, Most Amazing Top 10 Anime. Number 8. HYDRA Cap. HYDRA Cap is definitely a pretty bad thing that happened for the Avengers in, well, in many regards. One, HYDRA Captain America is literally another version of Captain America who for a while we actually thought was the main continuity version for real. So we're not off to a great start with that. Number 2, the Avengers failed to stop Hydra's Supreme Cap from taking over the US. Number 3, some of the Avengers were even manipulated into joining Hydra and Hydra Cap's forces. Some of them were actually like possessed, and some of them were just kind of made to do so. All around, it was just a rough time and not a great look for the Avengers overall. I'm actually surprised there isn't more pushback from the public today as a result of this one. Number 7, worst boyfriend ever. I wish I could say this was a one-time instance, but this is one of the worst, most consistent things that we've seen from Peter Parker throughout all of his relationships. He's not only super awkward around the ladies, but also has a tendency to behave badly with his romantic partners as well. For one, Peter very rarely lets people in on his secret of being Spider-Man, which causes a lot of problems early on in relationships that usually end up causing a breakup before things get super serious. And you might be thinking to yourself, but wait a minute, Amanda, hasn't Peter Parker told Mary Jane before that he's Spider-Man? Yes, but she also apparently knew from like day one that he was Spider-Man, so I don't know if that even counts because she knew the whole time. But beyond that, he also says things and does kind of things that are just in general awful. He snapped at his partners, lied to them, gotten them into all kinds of danger, blamed them for things that weren't their fault, and even at times physically hit them. Like when Mary Jane tried to break up a fight between Peter Parker and his clone Ben Reilly, and in a mindless rage he slammed her back, causing her to go flying into a wall. Also, Spider-Man is super strong, so even if he like flicked Mary Jane, I imagine that would be terribly painful. Oh, and she was also pregnant at the time with their child, which just makes it even worse. Number 6, final fight. When the Earth was threatened by incursions during the events of Time Runs Out, what did the Avengers do? Save the day? Try to stop those incursions? Not exactly. Captain America had once been a member of the Illuminati, the secret group of heroes who banded together to resolve ideally all of Earth's problems without anyone actually even knowing. A group of superpowered intellectual, philosophical, and moral geniuses. At least, that's what they thought. When the incursions were discovered to be a threat, and the majority of the group felt that it was important to consider the possibility that they'd maybe need to destroy other worlds to sort of save themselves from it, Captain America fought vehemently against that idea. As such, his mind was wiped, and he was decidedly ejected from the group. When he regained his memories, rather than use the Avengers to fight against the incursions and find a way to stop them, he actually spent the last bit of time before the multiverse was to end hunting down the Illuminati and in a toe-to-toe battle with Iron Man. Ant-Man.
Number 5. Namor and Atlantis. As a member of the Avengers, when the very serious and long-awaited Avengers vs. X-Men event took place, Wanda remained on the side of her crime-fighting friends. A main cause of this event was the return of the Phoenix Force, which was unintentionally split among 5 members of the X-Men. The Phoenix Five went after Scarlet Witch, which is fair, considering the crazy things she has done to cause the mutant community a whole heck of a lot of grief in the past. After one of the Phoenix hosts, Namor the Submariner, lost in his fight to Scarlet Witch, he went and attacked Wakanda. He was so close to winning too. Too bad Wanda showed up yet again and used her powers to completely wreck him, saying, "Go away," and bursting him into shards like he was a delicate piece of china. She then subdued the whole of Atlantis too. Yeah, she's pretty scary.
Number 4. Civil War II. Even worse by far than Civil War I was its follow-up, Civil War II. In this story, we got more infighting, but for less logical reasons. This time, it was Iron Man versus Captain Marvel, because I guess Iron Man just really needs to like duke it out with all the captains. This one is one we can also likely more blame on the behind the scenes, as Marvel was definitely aiming to capitalize on Civil War I's success with this follow-up, but it just didn't work out too well because Civil War II didn't really make a lot of sense for most readers. But in terms of the canon, Carol, I think, was hands down to blame here for just being, well, unreasonably aggressive on the matter that was up for debate. Whether or not to let Inhuman Ulysses, a precog, predict the future and then based on those predictions stop future criminals from committing future crimes before of course they even happen. Yeah, and I say that as a Captain Marvel fan. I'm a big Carol Danvers fan, but this one was pretty one-sided in my mind. Even I am like, I think Carol was wrong and Tony was right, and I don't say that very often. Number 3 was too apathetic. Spider-Man's apathy is something that haunts him to this day and makes him pretty much the one to blame for his Uncle Ben's death. Well, I mean, I personally think Peter is much too hard on himself here, and that being that harsh only leads to more disasters later down the road that his intense sense of responsibility has a hand in causing, but I digress. Peter for sure thinks this is the worst thing he has ever done, allowing the man who would go on to kill his uncle to get past him. At the time when the guard who pursued the criminal asked for help, Peter simply didn't see the point in aiding. That wasn't his job, he thought. He wasn't a hero. However, afterward he learned that with great power comes great responsibility, a lesson that has haunted him and continues to both haunt and inspire him to this day. Number 2. Ignoring Scarlet Witch. Avengers Disassembled was bad, but likely what was worse was that it kind of could all have been avoided if the rest of the team had simply, I don't know, cared more about their teammate and friend, Wanda. Scarlet Witch had a lot happen to her, and although this is of course superhero comics where every day that you're alive there's a threat of trauma or, you know, of the world ending, or both, there had been many signs that Wanda was not in a good place. Rather than do something about it or, you know, attempt to, I don't know, get her help, mainly the Avengers just went on as though everything was fine. I mean, I know they all each have a lot individually going on, but come on guys. If you have someone with reality warping powers on your team and they are using those powers to create fake children which then disappear without a trace after they also lose their life partner thanks to them basically being taken apart, mind wiped, and rebuilt as a blank slate without emotion, you might think to offer them some help or, you know, at least check in to see like if they need anything, if they need a hug or a conversation. I'm not blaming them for what Wanda did, but I would at least like to hold them accountable for being pretty much awful friends to her in her time of need. Number 1. No more mutants. Probably one of the worst things that at least one of the Avengers did was to threaten all of the mutant kind's existence with just, you know, a few words. Although admittedly, this wasn't so much Wanda's fault as it was Marvel's, who of course needed some reason to get rid of mutants for a bit because, you know, they'd sold the rights away and they weren't really profiting as much from comics involving mutants at that time, and they simply had too many of them. But reasoning behind the story aside, during House of M, Wanda in the end struck out at all mutants because her father, she felt, was more obsessed with fighting for mutant rights than he was with his actual own flesh and blood family. Although we'd later learn that Scarlet Witch and her brother Quicksilver weren't even really like flesh and blood family. To begin with, part of the reason that Wanda suffered the mental break, which caused House of M and later M Day, had to do with the fact that her friends in Avengers didn't seem to notice or perhaps care that Wanda was suffering as a result of losing her children. And in fact, let us not forget that Janet Van Dyne, the Wasp, of the Avengers, was also the one who even kind of like caused Wanda to remember her kids to begin with. She kind of spilled those beans. So whose fault was M Day really in the end? It was still Wanda's. Wanda was the one that said the words, so it's still her fault. But Janet was there.
Number 10. House of M. Starting off with one of the big ones. Scarlet Witch is infamously unstable. It has resulted in the end of the line for multiple heroes on multiple different occasions. More on that later. Her tendency to lose it caused the Avengers and X-Men to come together to think of ways to deal with her. Some, including Xavier, even suggesting they put her somewhere she cannot do harm. Somewhere like the afterlife, for example. As you can imagine, it didn't sit very well with her when her brother Quicksilver told her about this and urged her to take action against it. Wanda used her reality warping chaos magic powers to rewrite reality to the House of M. A reality where mutants outnumbered humans, where a few heroes had what they wanted most to stop them from rebellion, and Magneto was the ultimate ruler. As for Wanda herself, she had one body that acted as her in public, while she could remain with her children, again in private. Number 9. Undead Horde. In the comic books, mutants have always had many different places to call home. One of the more long-lasting recent ones would be the island of Krakoa. It was a place where mutants felt safe, and no one but mutants had entry. Fortunately, Scarlet Witch is a mutant. Feeling regret for an action that will be much higher on this list, Wanda wanted to make up for her horrible mistakes by resurrecting all the mutants who met their end in Genosha at the hands of Cassandra Nova. Only, thanks to the fact that she can't seem to ever fix anything without actually doing a whole lot of damage, the deceased mutants were actually brought back as zombies. A whole army of mutant zombies invaded Krakoa, and it took the direct intervention from Doctor Strange to fix the problem. That becomes a bit of a theme for Wanda and Stephen Strange. Number 8. She led the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. Switching realities for a moment to the reality of Earth 1610, or the Ultimate Universe. On this Earth, just like on the 616 Earth, Wanda and her brother Quicksilver were part of Magneto's Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. But with the apparent departure of Magneto from his mortal coil, Wanda took leadership of the villainous group of mutants and gave them a bit of a rebranding. She wasn't all bad here, as she did keep in contact and sometimes work with Charles Xavier, whose opinions she respected while still believing that mutants were the superior species. Although a great leader, she still met her demise when a version of Ultron would fall in love with her, realize they could never be together, and then use a special bullet to take her out. Yeesh.
Number 7. Iron Man joins Kang. Yeesh, the crossing. What a weird crossover event. Every time I think I'm over it, we come up with a list topic where I kinda can't help but return to it. In this event, Iron Man, one of the main Avengers, was revealed to be secretly one of the baddest of the bad, as we learned that Iron Man had actually been working for Kang, or rather, Kang's Immortus version, for years. That's right, it turns out that Iron Man is actually a sleeper agent for Kang, or he was. He kinda still is, because he kinda got reconciled into one being, but it's still the old Iron Man. Anyways, as weird as it sounds, this was actually an even worse weirdness than Captain America working for HYDRA in my mind. At least that made more sense to me. Iron Man would fight against the Avengers, and when they struggled to defeat him, they called in a past version of himself for him to beat and almost kill.
Number 6. Morality Switch. Sometimes when Marvel wants to incorporate a cool idea for a comic series, they gotta come up with some awesome and elaborate ways to make it happen. It's half the fun of comics. A merging of Red Skull and the incredibly powerful Onslaught unleashed a huge Avengers and X-Men level threat called Red Onslaught on Genosha. Scarlet Witch and Doctor Doom combined forces to perform a spell that would switch the axis of morality inside Red Onslaught's mind to make him good and end the conflict. Honestly, a pretty genius idea. Only things went a little whack, and instead of switching the morality of just Red Onslaught, she switched the moralities of every single person on Genosha at the time. So everyone. Every villain became a good guy and every hero became bad. It was honestly pretty cool, but yet another time Wanda messed up a spell and affected everyone.
Number 5. Killed MJ. Again! Yeah, for someone who claims to love her so much, Peter is not very good at treating MJ well. This one comes to us from another alternate reality though, so we do have to, asterisk and add that in there, little editor note. Because of course, Peter would never kill Mary Jane in the main continuity, or more, he just hasn't done so yet. In the reality of Spider-Man Reign, we're taken to a potential future reality where Peter killed Mary Jane simply by loving her. Their being intimate, at least that's what's implied, caused Mary Jane to be exposed to Peter's radioactivity at a level where she ended up getting cancer and dying. His radioactive fluids. Yeah, that's pretty intense. In typical Peter fashion, this becomes one of his greatest regrets, giving MJ cancer, and only serves to basically drive him insane and turn him senile, which really doesn't help anyone and makes for a pretty crazy story when he returns as a bizarre and depressed version of Old Man Spider-Man. Old Man Spider-Man is super depressing.
Number 4. Magically made her children. Now before you get upset, giving birth is not evil at all. I mean, the kids could be a pain in your backside, and if they're the type to throw tantrums, then I mean it's everyone's problem at that point, but overall, they're a miracle. Problems arise though when 1. You have children against your partner's wishes, 2. They aren't actually real, and most importantly, number 3. You use black magic to make them. Yes, you see, when Scarlet Witch became an Avenger and fell in love with the android Vision, they got married, and even though he was against it, Wanda used her magical abilities with some manipulation from Mephisto to make herself pregnant. Something an android is obviously incapable of. The magic pregnancy gave birth to twins, who were then taken and absorbed by Mephisto. Eventually, the real essence of these twins transferred to become 2 real heroes, Speed and Wiccan, who are both very powerful heroes currently.
Number 3. Avengers Disassembled. Avengers Disassembled was a story arc where the Avengers essentially imploded. What had really happened was Wanda had learned of the secret being kept from her, that she'd had fake children, which she'd in essence kinda made, who had been taken from her and then wiped from her mind by Agatha Harkness. Now, Wanda didn't like that too much, and in essence turned against Agatha, killing her before turning on her friends and colleagues, causing them to lose control, attack one another, and sicking reality warped versions basically of like Vision and dead Avengers on them. Not only did the Avengers hurt one another, but they were made to do so by one of their own, and likely were even somewhat responsible for Wanda getting to a point where she decided to turn on them. So really, who's to blame here? Is it Wanda or is it the Avengers? Or is it kind of everybody?
Number 2. Took out her entire family. Remember when Scarlet Witch reversed the moralities of pretty much everyone? Well, it wasn't the only bad thing that came out of that moment from our favorite unstable magic user. After the moralities had been switched, Wanda wanted revenge on Dr. Doom for all the things he's done to her in the past, like when he manipulated her after she lost her memory into being his bride for his own power-hungry wants and desires. Understandable stuff like that. Her idea as more of a villain was to just go to Latveria and stop him breathing. Magneto and Quicksilver, her father and brother, did not want her to go down this path and tried to stop her. But being the dangerously unstable person she already is, she angrily and impulsively cast a spell that would end the life of anyone related to her by blood. Quicksilver dropped on the spot, instantly felled, but Magneto, to Wanda's surprise, remained. And that's how she and a lot of us found out Magneto is not actually Wanda's father. Oh, also she ended her brother's life, so yeah, that's kind of extremely evil. And coming in at number 1, it's M-Day. Alright, the other big one. So we know that in the House of M story, Scarlet Witch altered reality in some rather big ways, but it wasn't as if everything before this didn't happen, just no one could remember it. One mutant by the name of Layla Miller, for example, could remember the reality before, and she used her powers to restore the memories of a bunch of other heroes. Another mutant, who you might know of by the name of Wolverine, could sense that something was wrong with this reality. He and a few other heroes, including a resurrected Hawkeye, formed up into a team to put things back to normal. Seeing as Magneto was now the ruler of the world, it made sense to them that he was responsible, and they went to attack. During the scuffle, Magneto had his memories returned to him by Layla, and Wanda convinced him it was Quicksilver who urged her to do the whole reality warping thing. Angrily confronting Quicksilver, who admitted that he would have let Wanda perish, Magneto made him perish. Wanda, thoroughly angry and unstable yet again, revived her brother, yelled at her non-father, denounced Xavier, and in 3 words, no more mutants, she reverted reality and depowered 90% of the entire mutant population, resulting in a huge loss of life. All this on the day forever known as M-Day. What a great time.
Almost let a little girl die in surgery. In Amazing Spider-Man number 700, Doc Ock switches minds with Spider-Man. Sort of. Doc Ock, now in Spider-Man's body, is exposed to all of Peter's memories and experiences, and it definitely has an effect. He decides to become a superhero, calling himself the Superior Spider-Man. However, in the first issue of Superior Spider-Man, it's revealed that a portion of Peter is still residing inside of the body, and it has some control over Doc Ock's actions. So later in Superior Spider-Man number 8, the Superior Spidey finds a device that he can use to get rid of the last bits of Peter Parker that remain in his brain. However, in order to gain access to this device, he first has to perform surgery on a little girl. So this leads to a scene where Ghost Spider-Man is like in the background, basically trying to prevent Doc Ock from doing the surgery, knowing that Doc is going to finish off Peter Parker after he's successful. However, Peter does eventually relent and Doc succeeds in his surgery, but for a moment there it kind of seemed like Pete was ready to let a little girl die so that he could live. Not exactly Spidey's finest hour.
Number 9. Killed MJ. So Peter's track record when it comes to loved ones isn't as bad as someone like Daredevil, but hey, it isn't great either. In alternate universes especially, Spider-Man has caused a lot of harm to those that he's loved, and I mean a lot. And even in the main continuity, his track record isn't so great. In the Marvel Zombies universe, Spider-Man was transformed into a zombie, and as this happened, felt the uncontrollable urge taking over him. He was like, I'm so hungry, I gotta eat people. He tried to tell his loved ones to get away from him, but it was too late, and he ended up not only killing, but full on eating both Mary Jane and his Aunt May. Of course, can we really blame Peter for this one? Not so much. He was a zombie and he wasn't really in control here. But knowing Peter, you can bet he likely reminisced and blamed himself continuously for this for days on end, even while he was a zombie. Because, you know, Peter just loves to blame himself for everything. And before we move on to this next spot, just a quick little reminder to give this video a thumbs up if you are enjoying it. It really helps us out at the channel. And thank you if you've already done it.
Number 8. Allowed a kidnapping. In Amazing Spider-Man number 112, we see Spider-Man really worried about Aunt May. She's gone missing after Gwen Stacy gave her a hard time for meddling in Peter's life too much, and he spent most of the previous issue searching for Aunt May. In this issue, we see Spidey has become so distracted, he doesn't even notice this guy getting kidnapped nearby. What's worse, when Pete does notice this guy, who also notices him, he starts the classic Spidey monologue about how helping this poor slob will take hours. Hours he could spend searching for Aunt May. He actually leaves the guy to get kidnapped, saying, maybe someday I'll have the courage to face myself again. Damn, Pete, you could have easily stopped and saved this guy. If that wasn't bad enough, later on it turns out that Aunt May wasn't even missing, she just had a new job. Way to go, Spidey.
Number 7. Black Magic. Boggles my mind that given the track record of black magic users, people still seem to try and go that route, thinking it will be different for them. Wanda herself has a sticky history with black magic, possession, and evil dark deities, like Chthon for example. Another example would present itself in Avengers number 75 in 1970. After losing her powers, Scarlet Witch, Quicksilver, and the mutant Toad go to seek out a way for her to gain them back. They stumble upon a dark magic book, and super intelligently give it a read. A spell in this book allowed an extra-dimensional being by the name of Archon the Magnificent, Lord of Warlords, to teleport to Earth and kidnap her to be his bride. Oh, and he also was going to use nuclear boom booms to try and attack the world. The Avengers saved her and the world, but this led directly to Wanda's run-in with Chthon. Again, why do people decide to use black magic at all? I don't get it.
Number 6. He almost robbed a jewelry store. Okay, I know this isn't supposed to be top 10 things Spider-Man almost did, but I have to mention another really weird out of character Spider-Man moment. In Amazing Spider-Man number 87, Spidey has been suffering from an illness that he determines to be the radioactivity in his blood slowly killing him. He's been feeling delirious for a while and having a hard time using his powers properly, and he's swinging around the city, monologuing, wondering what it means for his future. Suddenly he remembers it's Gwen Stacy's birthday, classic Peter, and he doesn't have a gift. So in a bizarre moment, we see Spider-Man randomly decide to break into a jewelry store and he steals a necklace for her. He realizes what he's doing before it's too late and he kind of like puts it back, but he's already caused property damage and like, you know, thank God they don't have cameras because Jameson would just have a field day with that. The whole thing is just a really weird moment. Spider-Man starting to wonder if he's losing his mind. The whole thing was really surprising to me, and he almost went through with it.
Number 5. Create the Illuminati. Sometimes it only takes one Avenger to mess up everything for all of us. And that's kind of what happened when Tony Stark, aka Iron Man of the Avengers, decided to bring together the secret superhero group known as the Illuminati. Like I said, this wasn't the combined effort of the Avengers, but when you think about the Avengers now and even before, Tony has been a staple of that team for a very long time. And the Illuminati was really his genius idea. His genius idea. The Illuminati as a group have definitely caused more trouble than they're worth, causing a lot more problems in the cosmos than they've actually solved, playing a key role in the end of the multiverse during Time Runs Out when they couldn't save the world, helping to cause Secret Invasion and World War Hulk as well. So, yeah.
Number 4. Worked for the Jackal. The whole clone saga was definitely one of Spidey's lowest points, especially just the way that they totally messed with Peter's character throughout the whole thing. He was calling himself the Spider and just acting generally unpleasant, but when he found out that he wasn't the real Peter Parker but a clone, he really didn't receive that news very well. The Jackal somehow ends up convincing Pete to work with him, and somehow Peter buys it, even though it means working against his friend Ben Reilly. Peter eventually does come to his senses, but man, how could he have ever been convinced to work with a supervillain in the first place? You know, every time I look back on this era, I remember why people hate it so much. Both versions of Spider-Man are pretty decent, but the way that they're pitted against one another as if there can only be one and everything, the whole thing just felt kind of forced.
Number 3. Hawkeye and Ant-Man. As we know at this point, the Avengers have had to tackle the Scarlet Witch on multiple occasions, but she remained a member and a loyal one at that. After Wanda had gained a powerful new chaos magic from Chthon, she was a little bit more unstable than before. And after the children she had lost and forgotten about, an unintentional remark by fellow Avenger the Wasp mentioning her kids drove her over the edge. And her chaos magic was unleashed, and she went bananas on the Avengers, really giving it to them. This directly led to the de-lifing of the now Wanda-crazed Vision by She-Hulk, an illusion of a Kree invasion, a fake team of Avengers to protect Wanda, and not to mention the end of the line for both Hawkeye and Ant-Man. This is one of those incidents that led directly to the House of M event.
Number 2. He killed Charlemagne. In the one-shot Spider-Man vs. Wolverine from 1987, we get to witness an epic showdown between these two fan favorites. Peter winds up in Germany investigating a mysterious arms dealer. Charlemagne turns out to be an old associate of Wolverine's, and she's got all kinds of people after her. They track her to East Berlin, where Wolverine plans to kill her, sparing her from being tortured by the KGB. Spider-Man isn't really cool with the whole killing her part of the plan, so the two of them have a bit of a fight about it. However, after a helicopter breaks up the fight for a second, Peter's spidey sense kicks in, and thinking that Wolverine is behind him, he turns around and delivers a full-powered punch, instantly killing Charlemagne. It's implied that she probably intended for this to happen, as she was wanting to die and stuff, but still, if you had told me that Spider-Man once punched a woman with no superpowers and killed her in one hit, I'd be a little skeptical. But it really happened.
Number 1. Probably killed Gwen Stacy. Once again, Peter is causing harm to those he loves. What's more, this whole moment where he attempted to save Gwen and we hear her neck snap is made even worse for Peter in terms of his own guilt over the situation by the fact that he never really knows if it was him or if it was Green Goblin who is to blame for her death. Was she dead before he grabbed her, or did she die when his webbing latched on to save her, breaking her neck? We still don't really know for sure, although I think Green Goblin claims that she died while she was falling. He's like, a fall like that, she'd die before she hits the ground. And I'm like, wait, is that how falling works? It's not. Anyways. I mean, either way, Peter Parker is kind of to blame here, as Green Goblin has a tendency to target those that Spider-Man loves. So once again, just loving Gwen was in a way a terrible thing for him to do to her.